Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird won't sing.
Washington Square Park has always been known for its beauty and peaceful atmosphere. However, in recent years, people have begun to disappear without a trace in its vastness. A young girl named Olivia was walking in the park. She loved to enjoy nature and solitude, but suddenly the wind began to howl fiercely, as if starting a fire. The leaves of the trees rustled and the branches creaked, creating an atmosphere of unknown unease. As she walked through the narrow alley, Olivia felt someone following her. Turning, she saw a dark silhouette hiding behind the trees. Her heart began to beat faster, and she decided to pick up her pace. But to her horror, the path began to change, and Olivia realized she was lost. With each step, the park grew darker and more forbidding. Surrounded by trees, Olivia could no longer see a path or an exit. She screamed, but no one came to help. Suddenly, she saw something that stopped her heart. The bodies of the missing people hanging from the trees and bloody footprints on the ground. Olivia realized that she had fallen victim to this creepy place. Screaming one last time, she disappeared into the space of the park, leaving behind only the mystery of her disappearance. From that moment on, no one dared to approach Washington Square Park, but every night, in the middle of the dark forest, an inhuman roar can be heard. Strange things have been happening in a townhouse on West Street for a long time. Residents have reported unexplained noises, shadows moving across the walls, and unexplained power discharges. One of the families that moved into the house witnessed the most horrific incident. In the middle of the night, when everyone was asleep, a little girl, Mila, heard whispers on the second floor. She took a flashlight and went to investigate. As she climbed the stairs, she noticed an open door in the bedroom, with a strange light coming from it. Entering the room, Mila found herself on the edge of light and darkness. Something was moving in the darkness, coming towards her. In panic, she screamed, trying to scare the ugly spirit away. But its presence grew stronger, and the girl was left alone with the unknown horror. In the morning, her parents found Mila in deep shock and hysteria. She claimed to have seen a ghost trying to kidnap her. The family decided to sell the house and never return. 3. The history of Washington Square Park. Nestled in the heart of the city was the beautiful Washington Square Park, which for years had been the perfect place to relax and stroll. But soon the tales of the park's beauty and tranquility were replaced by dark tales that kept people awake. It is said that a certain mad artist decided to use the park as an artistic canvas. He began creating macabre sculptures and drawing strange designs at night. And after a few years, the park was transformed into a terrifying world of painted shadows. Every night, the artist came to the park to draw something new, and each time his work became more horrific and eerie. One day, during a full moon, most of the drawings on the ground and the sculptures took on animated forms. Monsters, vampires, and ghosts stood in the foreground, terrifying those who happened to be in the park at night. People who rushed to escape were lost in a world of madness, unable to distinguish between the real and the artistic. Since then, Washington Square Park has become a desolate and abandoned place, a place where people rarely walk after sundown. Still, rumors of spooky figures and the artist's revenge live on in the hearts of those who have ever dared to approach the park at night. 4. The story of the West Street townhouse. In the early 20th century, a townhouse with a dark history stood on West Street, one of the most prestigious streets in the city. The owners of the house were an aristocratic family, but despite its outward prosperity, there was an indescribable evil inside the building. Stories of strange happenings in the house spread, and the townspeople began to avoid the area around the townhouse. Rumor had it that secret whispers and unexplained noises emanated from its walls at night. Most of the neighbors claimed to have heard nothing, but the fear grew. One day, a young family decided to ignore the warnings and rent an apartment in the townhouse. They ignored the warnings and decided that all the stories were just fantasy. But after 2 weeks of living there, the young couple began to notice strange episodes. Rearranged objects, frightening shadows, and some kind of invisible presence. One day they heard a disturbing champagne noise. Frightened, the wife ran into the hallway to see what was going on. At that moment, a huge closet collapsed on her, grabbing her spine. Her husband, screaming madly, tried to save her, but was struck down by a heart attack and died on the spot. Since then, the townhouse has remained closed, and the ghosts of its unfortunate occupants continue to roam its rooms, reminding others of the diabolical power lurking behind its mysterious walls. The story. In the heart of New York City, a historic building on a famous street held a dark secret. The building was known for its beautiful architecture and rich history, but no one could have known that within its walls lurked a horror that would haunt innocent victims. A young woman named Elizabeth moved into the neighborhood full of hope for a new life. She rented an apartment in the building and felt all the comforts and conveniences. But from the very first days, she felt a strange presence in her apartment. Nightmares and sounds coming from behind the walls made her doubt her mental stability. Over time, the phenomena became more horrific and relentless. Elizabeth often heard footsteps, voices, and even saw ghosts in her apartment. She tried to make sense of what was happening and even sought the help of paranormal researchers, but they couldn't find an explanation and warned her of a malevolent entity lurking in the building. The longer Elizabeth stayed in her apartment, the more she felt demonic forces trying to take over her soul. She lost sleep from dreams and visions. Her physical and mental condition began to deteriorate, and her health was on the brink. Finally, in desperation, Elizabeth decided to leave the apartment, to flee this sinister place. But the entity in the building would not let go of its victim. As she began to pack, a series of unexplained and terrifying events occurred. Objects flew through the air, doors slammed shut with a deafening bang, and shadows came through the walls. With tears in her eyes and a heart full of terror, Elizabeth grabbed her belongings and rushed to the door, trying to free herself from the terrifying mud. But before she could leave, the creature revealed its true form, a fierce demon radiating fear and ruthless malice. In a final act of desperation, she fought off its attack and escaped the apartment. Since then, the building has become known as a cursed place where the demonic entity attempts to capture the souls of its innocent victims. New Yorkers walk past the building with trepidation and avoid it, realizing that it is never a good idea to toy with darkness and forces we cannot control.